much about your work, Jaishri, is the way you sort of move from one medium to another, but how also there's a strong, close dialogue among these different mediums, painting and sculptures, so that we see some of the sculptures on the wall. And you've often talked about sculptures in terms of installation as a sort of wall drawing, which is a notion that I'd like you to maybe describe a little bit. And then the paintings that we see on this black wall, they do have a very strong three-dimensional element to them. I know that this is a series that you began a few years ago in 2007, and it's called Signs of Time. So we see it as a gallery of portraits, mainly of women, and I think they sort of celebrate but also questions the different subtleties about women empowerment or women as victims of history. And I wonder if you can talk to us a little bit about how you began the project and the themes in it.
Basically, at the beginning of 2007, I was in an exhibition at PS1 MoMA called Emergency Room, and there were about 25-30 artists who had been invited to participate, and we had very strict parameters. We had to create works within 24 hours that reflected on something that had been happening in the media. And so it kind of put you under a really specific pressure where you were reading and reading and reading all these different media sources, from the New York Times to the BBC to Al Jazeera to, the Times of India, whatever I could get my hands on, and then kind of having to not overthink things and just quickly produce pieces. And the collage painting on that wall came out of that entire process of working like that so quickly. And the piece is called The Rape Off, and what inspired the piece was the death of a 15-year-old Afghani girl at the hands of some of the Allied forces who had raped her and then basically killed her to silence her. And this had been in the news, and I had been thinking about the position of women there, both in terms of the Taliban and the Allied forces, and how they had just really lost a lot of the power that they had come to kind of assume in the 60s and 70s there in Kabul, and the shift that had happened. And in that piece, I decided to not use the actual figure of a woman because it was such a charged and intimate thing that happens. It's such a violation that I didn't feel like I could put a living human in that piece. And so I went back and kind of Googled rape in art history to see the ways in which it had been dealt with, both within painting and sculpture and various ways. And I came upon this detail from the painting, The Intervention of the Sabine Women. And I thought that it was quite appropriate to use the painted figure of the woman, as opposed to an actual person that was now experiencing that. And so the process of making works that quickly kind of changed my practice in a very essential way, where before the work was very process oriented, but it was kind of intellectually really belabored to a point where I would sometimes lose my intention. And just being forced to condense everything that I wanted to say it so quickly, briefly, symbolically, became a really fantastic way to work. And so